We'll go ahead and get started then with our plenary panel. The panel will be moderated by Dr. Patrick McCarthy, he, him. Dr. McCarthy has a Ph.D. in industrial organizational psychology from George Mason University and a doctor in jurisprudence from the Nashville School of Law. He's been with us for several years, and he must like education to have gone through both those degrees along with all before. So help me welcome him to the stage, and he will introduce his fellow panel members.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and ask the panelists if they would come on up here and get settled in as we get ready to roll here, and I'll get us started, but give them really a chance to more properly introduce themselves as we go. And as they're coming in, can you hear me all right? First of all, I want to make sure that this is working okay. It's always a pleasure to be back here. I've been part of this conference since the first year of the conference, and doing this session has been a particular treat because we really kind of get
nice to meet you.
real life stories, real life impact, and advice along the way here, and shared insights. And every year the panel changes, and so it's always sort of a new opportunity to take that ride with you all. As they settle in, they're the real stars of the show. I'm just the one just kind of managing the process, if you will. All right. All right. What I'd like to do is just take a moment to let I don't have everybody's bio with me at the moment, so I want to give everybody a chance to just briefly take a moment to say hello and let us know kind of where you come to us from in this panel, and then we'll kind of get to the more formal questions. This will be the session itself. We'll get kind of conversational as it goes, and so one of the things I want to kind of let the audience know ahead of time is we are glad to welcome questions along the way, so feel free to be thinking about them as we go. We'll ask for some, but you can always just jump in and raise your hand at any point. We'll gladly bring you in at any point. But let's start with the introductions of the panelists. So if you would get us started, Zay.
Sure. Can you hear me? I mean, usually we say, can you hear me online? But again, it's always useful. I'm Sam Zaza. I'm an associate professor in the Information System and Analytics Department at the Jones College of Business at MTSU. I do research on diversity, equity, and inclusion, neurodiversity, and the whole 9 yards, workers in organizations, and how organizations need to react to that.
Thank you. Greg.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Cason. I use the pronouns he and him. I am a purchasing manager at Nissan North America, so please go outside and look at our booths and get some swag. And also an entrepreneur. I have a long-standing history with this conference. So me and Patrick, we started out years and years ago with this conference, and I'm so glad to see that it is still growing and educating people and bringing different diversity perspectives into the conversation. So thank you all.
Good afternoon. My name is Amna Osman. I'm CEO of Nashville Cares. Nashville Cares is an AIDS service organization serving Tennessee for the past 39 years. I joined Nashville Cares about 5 years ago, but I have 30 years in public health, and the majority of it has been on ending the HIV epidemic in the United States, and it's really a pleasure to be here today.
Hi, I'm Maurice Moore. I am an assistant professor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and I am a drawer and a painter and a performance artist.
Thank you so much. Well, we appreciate you. Yeah, thank you. Ready. You know, the title of this panel is Bringing Your Whole Self to Work. So if you just kind of identifying a little bit more about what perspective our panelists bring to this. So that topic, what does that mean to you? And what is your maybe more personal story on that issue? So we'll start out a little bit. Let's give Maurice a chance to get us started this time.
I don't know. I think maybe I had like 5 Black professors like teach me about drawing and painting, and none of my professors through like from 2001 to maybe 2011 and 2016 and 2023, none of them were out and queer or trans. So like, it's like how do you even imagine yourself teaching people about art? So I always let students know that I'm out and I'm queer and obviously I'm Black, but just thinking about like you're kind of, I mean, I'm an artist, so like inventing and being creative, but you are inventing and creative these important things like representing what it's like to just teach art. So I just don't think a lot of people think about that. You know, I only had maybe 3 or 4 people teaching me about drawing who weren't people of color. So a lot of questions came up throughout my career about, is my art Black or is it queer? Thinking about where I show my art. So big reason why I wanted to be on the panel, because I wanted to, like, you know, I feel like they're corporate people, but like, where do the arts and business kind of fit into these situations? So like, you know, this is, because I don't have to talk to you all. I can just put my work up and perform, but like, I want students to know that we do have a voice. So like, just to kind of talk about that and just inventing from nothing. So that's sort of, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much.
So for me, as I thought about this question is, you know, I think trying to bring my whole self to work is really about being authentic and just being myself, and really being able to show my vulnerability and to really align my values of, you know, that I live by each and every day: integrity, diversity, embracing all people, loving all people, leading from the heart, being able to be compassionate and empathetic and understanding. And that really my passion is to end the HIV epidemic. I've dedicated my whole career to ending the epidemic and really ensuring that Black and brown people and LGBTQ folk, people who are living in poverty, people who have barriers and access to healthcare, can really thrive and live their best lives. And so by being able to show up at my best self and live my truth and live my authentic self and have the courage to be able to speak up and speak out, that motivates me each and every day. And, you know, every day I wake up, I enjoy what I do. It's a challenge, but I know that we have all the tools, all the strategies, the science and the medicine to be able to end the HIV epidemic. But the social determinants of health, the barriers that people experience each and every day, systemic and institutionalized racism, a lot of the barriers around policy and laws that impede people living with HIV, LGBTQ folk, poor folk, Black and brown folk, to be able to really thrive is what really motivates me. And I'm just, you know, I have fire in my belly and I wake up every day and I just show up at my best. And I'll be doing this until I retire, because I know we can end the HIV epidemic and we could ensure that people have whole health. Physical health, mental health, and sexual health equates to whole health.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Passion and commitment is something we can all use and benefit from. Thank you so much. Greg.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak on 2 perspectives. One has been an entrepreneur and bringing my whole self to work, because I'm the business owner, so I can do whatever I want to do. So it's a whole lot of things called, what I look at it as freedom. As a business owner, I had the freedom to do what I want to do, wear what I want to wear, go where I want to go, talk how I want to talk, etc. But from a business perspective, the corporate environment, if I don't bring my whole self to work, because I'm predominantly right-handed. So if I take my right hand, I put it behind my back, and I'm typing, I may get the job done, but I'm not as effective as I would be if I'm bringing my whole self to work. It's going to take me longer to type that email. It's going to take me longer to do something else because I'm predominantly right-handed. And so being able to come to work, be my whole self, have conversations just like everyone else has conversations, because I'm married and I've been married for 7 years, but I have to come out every single time I have a new employee coming to my organization, because we always talk about, you know, the family type situations. Being a production manager and purchasing manager, I'm meeting clients outside of working hours for dinner, and most of the time you start out with, you know, family conversations, just the generic stuff. So I'm always coming out each time that I meet someone. And for me, at first, it was a little bit kind of uncomfortable, but the more I did it and the easier it became, and now it's just second nature to me. And that's, I think it allows me to be very, very effective with my job, my communication with my team, working with my team. So no longer it's a barrier no more. I'm free to do and act the way I need to act.
Thank you so much. And Sam.
How can I add to this? I'm not sure. So actually for me, it starts with the classroom, right? To be there to support my students and to acknowledge our uniqueness. We are all unique in different ways, whether our identities or any other aspect of our personalities. It's just to build that trust and that it is okay to be unique. It's not just to tolerate uniqueness, but also how we can integrate that into the workplace, into the classroom, how we can celebrate our uniqueness, how we can, because again, based on research, to have a diverse team actually outperform a team that is homogeneous. So diversity, again, diversity is a whole concept that is not just based on gender, race, or you name it. It's a whole perspective. The more unique we are in all of these different aspects, the more actually we can contribute, we can add to the conversation, we can add to our society. So this is what I try to support my students with.
Thank you. You know, and a lot of them we'll get a chance to talk about today. So these are some introductions of folks and the perspectives that we have along the way. But you know, life in the workplace, as you're trying to be your authentic self, it's probably been a different story and a different series of experiences, different challenges, and different better moments along the way as well too. So we're going to take a look a little bit at kind of what their personal journeys have been along the way, but also from an organization's point of view. What are the kinds of things organizations are doing or should be doing or can be doing the best and maybe sometimes not so great along the way. So we'll kind of ask questions from all of those perspectives. And of course, the other aspect we want to kind of get at is we've got some people in the room who perhaps are looking at what the next or first, whichever it is, stage of your career is upcoming. And how do you sort of recognize what that advice might have for you along the way here? So a little bit, you kind of left us off with the topic of diversity, and let's maybe go in the organizational direction for a moment. We'll come back to the individual, but you know, diversity expands overall potential, but diversity also means differences. And differences can create uncomfortableness, misunderstandings, and other challenges to sometimes effective collaboration. And organizations and individuals within those organizations face those challenges and hopefully navigate them to leverage that diversity to a competitive advantage. Doesn't that sound lovely? It's not always that easy. So what are some of the strategies, you know, within organizations? What are some of the things that you find organizations have done, the good or the bad of it, to try and navigate a diverse workforce? And maybe if you've seen some things that have not gone so well, or if you've experienced the better side of that, we'd like the full spectrum of whatever your exposure's been. Let's start with you, Greg. We'll jump in the middle, give you a chance to kick us off on this.
So we practice what we call diversity of thought. So whenever we have a meeting or we coming together, because there's all types of different departments coming together into this particular meeting to, you know, strategize something, or most of the time it's a decision that needs to be made. And so what we try to do is, even if I'm leading the meeting and I have a set agenda because I have a thing that I want to get done and I want something to get approved, I need some money for something, I don't take the meeting and take charge of every single thing or every aspect of the meeting. I ask each participant, do they have an input, even before the meeting? So it's a part of their agenda. So I'm speaking on the topic. She may be speaking on the topic. Someone else may be speaking on a topic during this meeting. And that way we get in everybody's perspective and everybody's opinion on the topic of conversation. So that way you're involving more people in different thought perspectives, because my mindset is on a single thing to get accomplished, get money for something else. But my objectives and my goals may be a conflict with someone else that's in that particular room. So we all need to understand the dynamics of what's going on and the thought process and take that in consideration whenever we're making a decision.
And obviously there could be things formally or informally, and do feel free to take this conversationally. But, you know,
let me then add. Let me add to this. Again, for organizations, one of the things is that diversity is easy to achieve because it's visible, right? So yeah, I can say, I mean, I can look around without any effort. If I'm just looking at the color of skin, I can easily say, yeah, I have different colors as an organization, right? But I think the conversation need to move to exactly what you described. It's not just diversity, it is actually inclusion, right? So some people will confound inclusion with belongingness, but they are very, very similar concepts, right? It's great that you invite somebody to the table, but you know what? That's not enough. What we need to do is to engage them in the conversation, to be heard, to be seen, but also to be part of the decision process. So that's one of the things that organizations need to shift the mindset of just achieving diversity. Maybe it is the first step, but it's not the last step. So there are many steps after that. One of the things that can be done actually for organization to promote diversity is first to have leadership training, which is to provide training on recognizing their own biases, right? How we would know or how we can educate ourselves about any identity if we don't recognize our shortcoming first, what we know, what we don't know. So organization, if they can build those programs for leadership programs, but also another thing is the mentorship. So employees need mentors, and it is better that they are mentors that they identify with. Now there is stream of research about, is it better to have a mentor for instance, for a woman or for LGBTQ? Is it better to have a mentor who really going through the same experiences, or that mentor could be anybody, but maybe that person needs to be an ally, right? So allyship, also to promote that, to promote open, clear communication as we are doing here, is also key. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, we're hearing out there a lot of organizations are talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and trying to build programs and systems. I think I agree with my colleagues that, diversity of thought, inclusion, creating cultures of inclusion, but it's also about leadership, and making sure that your leaders understand, because it's kind of that top down versus, and the bottom up, but more importantly, how do leaders create a culture and an environment that is inclusive? But I think also it's from, that whole process of even recruiting. We got to a point where we had diversity, but did we really have inclusion? Mm-hmm. And was it a system that was equitable? And so we did a lot of work on even changing our hiring practices, creating panels and ensuring that we have diverse panels. So the candidates that were coming in were not mirroring the people that were looking, the hiring manager that was looking for candidates. So that was really very important. Also, having very honest dialogue and giving room for people to show their vulnerability and to be honest about how they're feeling about the organization. That is really tough work. And sometimes it sounds really good in theory, but in practice, it does not go well. We had this whole system of trying to undo racism in our organization. I'm the first Black person, the first woman to lead Nashville Cares. And so coming in, we had a program around undoing racism. We created a racial equity committee, but what did we do? We started to bring employees and basically tell them that either they were racist or they were not achieving what they were supposed to do and wanted to be an HR department. And so that got really ugly really quickly and could have legal consequences, because we were bringing employees and telling them the things that you're doing are X, Y, and Z. And so we had to really step back and stop the whole program and say, how are we going to go about this the right way? And so we engaged the whole organization to go through an undoing racism workshop together and to really talk about institutional and systemic racism. Mm-hmm. And for us to understand, whether Black, brown, or white, what has been our position, our power and control, and how do we see ourselves in the system, and to really do some hard work. And it was tense. That was really hard work. And so we started that about 4 years ago, and we're still working and trying to figure out things. We've looked at equity and pay between Black versus white folks. You know, we did a whole project in my previous, job. I worked for the government in the state of Michigan. And let me tell you, we would have Black and brown folks that had the same jobs as their white counterparts, had more education and more experience, and were paid $20,000 to $30,000 less in that system. And really, HR, when we brought that to their knowledge, they were like, oh, we didn't know we had that problem. And as they started to dig in, there was a huge problem of, inequities in pay and disparities in pay. And so we had to really work from the top all the way down in that system. And folks that were working in that system that were Black and brown couldn't really speak about that. They came to work every day. But if we're talking about bringing your best self to work and you see those disparities and inequities happening, how are you going to bring your talents, your skills, your gifts to the job and do your best and show up at your best? And what is that going to mean, not only in the professional space, but in your personal space when you go home? So I think sometimes as organizations, we don't think about these things and we just take them for granted because they're things that are being done and have been done for years.
And Maurice, as you think about bringing your whole self to work and the different places you've been, what are some of the things that organizations have done particularly well to help that? Or you can take it the other way, not so well.
I just finished a PhD, and I was the only Black person in the program when I got in, and then 5 years when I graduated, and they let a whole class full of non-Black people in. So, and then they talk about diversity and inclusion and that they care about us. But I'm like, if we cared, we would be represented. It wouldn't be a question. I cannot be the only Black person who's interested in the arts or performance studies. So like, what are you doing to like outreach and things like that? So those are situations I've kind of been in. So I think it made me, I don't bring your whole self to work, but for me, it's like, I think it's healthier to be out, but there's still like not harm, but there's still a risk to being out. So you have to think about what type of self you're bringing to work. So for me, when I go to work, it's Dr. Moore. It's not Maurice Moore, Ph.D. So to be separate and to be able to take care of myself and to say, like, just no to people, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to do any queer 101 or race 101 or disabilities 101. Like, I have to say, but I also in my head, there's all these mental gymnastics and navigations that we all have to do to like just to say no and worry about is there going to be retaliation and things like that. So bringing myself to work is complicated and it's messy. And for me, I just try to talk to students that I'm teaching about that. Because someone defaced my door and I told them I reported it to campus police. And I say, like, when I was your age, I wouldn't have reported that because I would have been too afraid. But now it's just like, just speaking up for myself and other people, it's just important to like, I don't know, just show that I'm still fighting for myself and other people. So I just think some of the things about bringing yourself to different spaces, some of us just don't understand what it's like to just be the only, I feel like we maybe know what it's like to be the only one in the room, but a lot of people don't know what that's like, or to be able to voice that. So those are some of the things that I feel like we're constantly navigating.
And I want to follow up on that, actually. LGBTQ plus diversity can potentially raise a wide variety of reactions, as you started to allude to there. And organizations may contain people at, of course, all ends of the spectrum. So what have you encountered, good or bad, and what advice do you have for LGBTQ plus individuals who may be trying to navigate their own version of that? So Sam, you want to kick us off and we'll let everybody go from there.
Again, this is a really great example of what I want to say. If you want to advocate for LGBTQ plus, first ask them what they want. It's a two-way communication, right? Even if your intentions are good, for organization, not just to tailor some programs for them, without them being actually involved in the conversation and in the communication. So to navigate again, from me as an outsider, but I look at it from a person who look different, who feels different on the job, who really is the only person on the job who looks like this. So back to my colleague's point, how to navigate it, I would say it's not difficult. It's not easy. It is difficult. The first thing for me, what really worked, and this is advice I give it to anybody, regardless how you identify yourself, look for allies on the job who can actually support you, stand up for you, and be there when you want to navigate. I think we are all part of a puzzle. We are one piece. Take your time to figure out how you fit and choose something that really, really talk to your heart. And yeah, this is how I can speak to it.
That's great, because we've got a lot of folks in here who may be experiencing their own version of that or are nervous about entering the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you've encountered and what your advice is, especially for those who perhaps are inexperienced.
And whatever you're feeling, trust me, it's not just you. A lot of people felt the same way. And this is something I also discovered through my own journey. We all long to belong, right? This is like our nature. We do want to be in the in group, right? So we start to try to see what commonalities we find with certain people to feel that we can form a group, that we belong, right? We need that feeling. And I was teaching at Florida State University during my PhD program. And actually my students, my class usually used to have the highest number of non-white students. And one time, one student who is African American approached me and he said, Dr. Zaza, actually, I took your class because you are like me. But you see, like on the surface, we're not. But on our journey, our experiences, we are. So we can identify, even though maybe I'm not African American, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand everything they go through, but trust me, part of their experiences I'm going through. So this is my advice.
So for Nissan, employee resource groups have been around for a long time, and they normally start out with, like, for us, it was like a resource group, and I think we had wellness at work resource group, et cetera. And our corporation would give funding for activities pertaining to the resource group, right? So a ally actually came up to us and wanted to start an employee resource group pertaining to the LGBTQ plus community. And eyebrows started being raised. And so we went to the executives and we asked them, we wanted to start this employee resource group, and we was trying to recruit people to join it. And so our first meetings was in conference rooms that did not have any windows or any doors that had windows, so that it was like a secret society of bringing LGBT plus people into a room just to discuss how are we going to navigate these four walls and how are we going to make this employee resource group beneficial and all of the things that's going to come about it because you're a part of it. And so, you have to be, people was associated. If you was a part of this group, you was associated to be either part of the LGBTQ plus community, et cetera. So internally, us 12 members was kind of like struggling on how do we do this? What do we need to do? And so we looked at it from a marketing perspective. And because we went to Nissan and said, there is a lot of money in the LGBTQ plus community. They have a lot of disposable income. So we can use our knowledge and our connection to that community to help drive vehicle sales, whether right or wrong or indifferent. That was our strategy, and to get our employee resource group the recognition that we needed. And so what we did, we started out with the Pride festivals. And what we would do is we would have a display of a vehicle, and we would give discount codes out to the attendees. And they could use that discount code to go to any Nissan or Infiniti dealership and purchase a vehicle with a discount. And so we track those vehicle sales from those different Pride events to the executives, because what we do is we follow the customer for an entire year of their journey. So when I give you a code, you get to access that code, and we follow you through the purchasing panel for a whole entire year. So from just one Pride event, we sold 25 vehicles. And so we use that revenue to go to our executive and say, from this Nashville Pride event, we sold 25 vehicles. Imagine what we could do if we go to LA. What if we could do if we go to Atlanta? And so what we started doing now is going to all the Pride festivals. So now there's a Nissan display at every single Pride festival across the country and globally. And so for us, we use the aspect of a financial gain to get the attention that we needed. And then from that, once we had the executives' ears, now we started making policy changes. This is what's effective to or important to the LGBT community. These are our policies, and this is what we need to do. And then we started connecting with the HRC and making sure we get 100 on the HRC score. And then we promoted that within the organization. So again, we found a strategy in order to get the ears of our executives, whether right or wrong or indifferent. That's the way we challenged it. And I think it was a success from where we at today.
Strategy. So at Nashville Cares, we serve the LGBTQ community. About 60% of our workforce is from the LGBTQ community. So we really are, when we're recruiting, when we're interviewing people, they have to understand that, this is a community that we serve. This is part of our team. This is who we are. And, if you want to join us, you have to either be appreciative, understanding, open to learning if you're not from the LGBT community, if you're an ally. And so for us, we continue to see what's happening in our country. 650 bills attacking the LGBT community across this country. Even bills here in Tennessee. And so we advocate, our staff go out and advocate, the communities that we serve advocate. And so for us, it's just part of who we are. And anybody that joins us has to be accepting and open and affirming.
You have any other comments on that one, Maurice? That's all right. If not, we can move on to the next piece. All right. So, and I want to give the room a chance in a moment here. I'm going to ask one more follow-up question. And as I do, I want to kind of give you the guys the heads up. As we got a lot of people in the room who said you're either in the workforce or heading in that direction. And so you may have questions about what it's like to navigate that or other kinds of advice. So be ready to jump in with that next. But my question for you, maybe to set up that transition is, you talked about what's going on at Nissan, and you talked about it at some of these other places. How can a student or somebody who's on the market otherwise figure out what's going on at the places when they're looking for a place? In other words, how can they identify what the culture or situation is likely to be and where they should be drawn to or away?
I'm gonna start with something very simple, honestly. Go look at if they publish like who is working there, right? Go look, and you'll be maybe surprised, right? Sometimes you go to those companies and you see like our staff, you will see from the owner to the the whatever position, they are all white male. Maybe just the receptionist is a female. That tells you something, right? So this is like very, very obvious. But also, if you look at their community engagement, that also tells you something, what type of activities they do, what community they engage with. This will also give you something. If you email them and somebody, like if you have that kind of communication, look at their signature. If they are doing something like really big with the community, you will see them like bragging about it in their signature. If there is nothing, that tells you maybe what they're doing just for marketing. These are for me like the three obvious things to do.
I agree. Also, Human Rights Campaign, you can search their website and look at the corporations that have policies and procedures that protect their workforce. social media is huge now. Look at their social media, what they're posting, what they're doing, advertisements. Even though print is not always the most popular thing, there's still organizations like us that still print and do things and advertisements and other things that promote diversity. Also within your own social networks and where you're at now, corporations are always tagging you or engaging with you pertaining to your buying habits and spending and places that you go and all of those things of that nature. So there is a connection that they're using to reach out to you. And if you're seeing the same thing from the same corporations that are engaging to you, then that lets you know that corporation is targeting something that is important to you as well. So those are some of the ways that you can, engage, and then ask people that work there. We'll be honest with you if we like what we're doing, if we don't like what we're doing, type of situation, or they'll tell you what the culture is, or what they're doing to change the culture. Because no matter where you go, it's always going to be something that people like or dislike, and things of that nature. And it's hard for me to retain talent because it's so many different perspectives that people are looking for in the workforce nowadays. It's no longer like when my parents was working, you stay with a corporation until you retired. Now, if you ain't getting a promotion in 5 years, if people looking at me like, okay, I got to go find somewhere else to work. I'm like, well, you just completed your 5th year. I just gave you a coffee mug and you get ready to leave me. Now I just got you where I need you right now, type of situation. But again, looking to people that work with that organization or company, and they can tell you if it's a good place for you to work or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great suggestions. Also look at the website, look at, what they're promoting. If they're have any presentations, go on, on social media, you'll learn a lot about an organization. Or sometimes, when I first started my first job, I called the organization after I researched it and I said, I'd like to have a meeting with you. And they responded immediately. And I was like, as a young professional, they really care. And actually went and met with 5 people there, and they just talked and bragged about the organization. And, I just walked out having a really good feeling. And really, that's one of the reasons why I've stayed in public health all those years. That was impactful to me, that when I called them, they responded, and, I was able to engage. But you have to feel good about where you're going. Sometimes we always say, is it a job? Is it a purpose, or is it a career? And so you need to ask yourself, and I know young folks, because I've got 2 of them, they like to change jobs, they get bored. And so how do you stimulate folks and keep them engaged, and how do they find community and connection in the organizations that really support LGBT folks, people of color, people that look like me, people that want to do the same thing, that have the same passion?
Maurice, what advice do you have for helping people find a place that's right for them?
I mean, I think it's complicated. I think you should keep your options open. Date a lot of people, do a lot of different jobs, apply to a lot of different jobs, really put yourself out there. I want to say this in an appropriate way, but I have work and lots of work to show. So if you have a place I can show, you can get this work. So that's the way I think about it. But you also want to think about, is the place violent or inflicting things on people or things like that. But I think keep your options open. I think a lot of us, I don't feel this way anymore, but a lot of us feel like we only have 1 or 2 options. We only have 1 shot, and that's not true. I like to think that we have trillions of options. So I feel like that would help a lot in terms of things. And also, know a job is a job. You can get another job. Don't feel like it's like a sentence, like you have to stay in it forever. If I felt that this job, and I love it, it's my dream job that I have now, but if it wasn't work out, I would go somewhere else.
Unless you work for me, you have to stay.
No, but but it's like no one, like I'm the only artist sort of in my family, that there's some people younger than me. So it's just like, how do I navigate this when I didn't necessarily have people who are older than me in terms of the art? So a lot of stuff, I just feel like I'm making it up as I go, and first generation, all of that. So I just think a lot of things we just don't take into consideration about a job, because the way I think about a job, and I can see from my parents and their values really instilled on me, like I would never show up late. But there's some people at my job who brag like, oh, you know, I'm always 15 minutes. I would never do that. Some of it is dealing with race and things like that. But I just think having conversations with people about this. But I would just say keep your options to open. I applied for like 70 jobs before I got this one. So like I didn't play. So, you know, and I'm an artist, so I'm used to rejection. So it was no problem. Because but it's like my arts training kind of prepared me for like how galleries like say no. So that's how I took when I was applying for the job that I have. So and also, I want to say a lot of people maybe don't choose their research or career, but I got to choose mine, so I chose something that I love and enjoyed. So I think it would help you out if you pick something that you, like, even on the worst days, I get to draw and I get to teach people about drawing and painting. So hopefully you've been researching things that you love and enjoy. I think that helps a lot.
Well, let's turn the tables on the room. I've got more questions, but more importantly, you probably do too. And whether you are LGBTQ or you're an ally or you're anyone else who is trying to understand and relate to the issues that go on here, what questions do you have for the panel? Right over here. Will, you can right over here. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Patrick.
It's like a talk show in a really big room.
Good afternoon, everyone. So one of my questions is, I know Dr. LePen mentioned this today in her presentation about tokenism, right? And you either being the only person of color or the person of LGBTQ plus community, how do you show up and then have those conversations continuous with people as it pertains to just being the only person?
I will speak to that because being one of the out LGBTQ plus people in a leadership position within Nissan, I get the opportunity to come to places like this and travel on behalf of the diversity, equity, inclusion company and supplier diversity and things of that nature. It's a pleasure, and then it also comes with a little pain. And a lot of times people are asking me to either mentor or represent the LGBTQ plus community at different organizations and things of that nature. And I want to say, I'm more than just that acronym. I'm more than just that. However, I have to look at the importance of why are I being asked to do that? And it's because someone needs to see someone like them in that room. We sponsor 100 Black men organization. And in the African American community, LGBTQ plus is often looked down upon, even in today's society right now. And so to have that organization recognize that there are young Black men that identify differently than what their parents would want them to, and having someone like myself sit at the table and let them know that it's okay to be you. It's okay to do these type of situations. And they can see someone like myself in a position of leadership gives them that empower, where in 10, 15 years ago, it may not have been a topic of conversation. It may have been something different where they would probably steer that young man to a different mindset or thinking type of situation. So I'm glad to be utilized in that capacity. And, you know, so I don't look at it as being utilized as a token per se in a negative standpoint. I look at it as also being the voice of some individuals that still does not feel comfortable. And even though we have all of these policies and procedures, and Nissan has these flags displayed, and we have rainbow color cars and all that other things of that nature, I still find individuals within our organization that does not feel comfortable being themselves at work. And it's disheartening to know that I'm sitting beside someone, we're working beside someone, and they still feel that they can't talk about their husband or they can't talk about their wives at work because of fear of rejection, fear of not being able to be promoted. And it's hard, but I still be the person that goes to our leadership team and says, yes, we do all of these things and we looking good and we doing all this other stuff, but you're still missing the point. Somewhere along the line, people still don't feel safe and secure here. And this is just one dynamic. It can be African-American women. It can be anyone. It could be the disabled or physically challenged individual that does not feel like Nissan is a safe place for them to work and be their authentic self. And it's sad.
Mm-hmm. I think
There's a
I just
question.
want to comment on that. It's hard. You know, you have to have a lot of self-love and self-awareness and appreciation for yourself. You know, as a Black woman in leadership, I've been in boardrooms. I've been the only Black woman in leadership, and I've been called the poster child. I was hired to fill a quota. And sometimes, you know, if you're not strong and you don't believe in yourself and what you bring, that can get into your head, and it can really affect you, and it can impede you from what you need to do for the rest of, you know, your community and your people. And sometimes it can be so difficult that even in the system, your own people don't feel safe and they don't feel appreciated. And they also get caught up in this system that, you know, they show up very angry, and it can really bring out sometimes the worst in you. So if you are the only person, whether Black, LGBTQ, or somebody with a disability, or, you know, think about the value that you bring and that, you know, why you're there, and don't let those things affect you, because it can be difficult. And, you know, I've struggled when I was younger, and, you know, I'm 52 now. I don't care what people think. I'm going to say what I want to say. But when I was young, I had to really do a lot of self-reflection. It did mess up with my head at some point.
Got another question over here.
So I feel like we're briefly talking about it, but my question is, since the start of your like career and perhaps like since early personal experiences and all, how do you guys see like the changes that have been made throughout all those years? And also at the same time, I feel like we're also like just scratching the surface. So what is that missing? I mean, is it like a marketing or branding strategy to like take us to the next, I would say, like evolution of inclusion? I mean, I just wanted to have your thoughts on that. And I don't know. Yeah.
Let me talk to you, and again, based on research that has been done about organizations. To have diversity as dictated in organization, we have to move through the human rights movements and all of that. And this is, if you go back to the historical side of that, this is when organization pushed to actually hire, and then they start doing diversity management, all of that. But till now, organizations are falling short into inclusion management. That mindset to shift from diversity as, we have a diverse workplace. The mindset needs to shift, even though like you will see they have diversity, equity, and inclusion, but having these three concepts together really is misrepresenting of the power of each concept by itself. Because in the workplace, diversity has different impact than a lack of equity or lack of inclusion. Based on my own research, actually, in organizations, the perception of diversity or equity or inclusion, perception of diversity and equity had no impact on an employee decision to leave the organization. But perception of inclusion had the only impact. So when organization lump these together into, you know, they always say DEI. I'm against of calling it DEI. You need to say diversity, equity, inclusion, because each one of these has different mechanism, different interventions that organization need to address. So that misconception that, yeah, it's easy to achieve inclusion. No, it's not. It is subjective. Diversity is something visible. inclusion is something invisible. What KPIs organizations are implementing to measure, because now everybody is so big about we're doing inclusion initiatives. Well, great. How are you implementing it? How are you measuring its success? How are you measuring its impact? Right? I mean, till now, these are not really, like I work with organizations, and the first thing they ask me, through which KPIs we can measure. We are investing a lot in inclusion, how we can measure it. So it took us a long time to get diversity, right, in the American history. How long it's gonna take us for a real inclusion? I don't know.
And I think it's different between different organizations too, as well. So from a corporation standpoint, our primary focus was not on diversity, equity, inclusion, and any of those aspects. It was just to manufacture and sell cars. And so understanding the dynamics of bringing in diversity, equity, inclusion into that landscape for employee retention and other aspects of it, because it was brought to our executives' attention that these are some of the things through, like you were saying, like exit interviews, is that these are some of the important factors within our organization. But for our executives, their mindset was, how do we reduce these cars as quickly and as more efficiently as possible, and then get them to the consumer as fast as possible to sell? And so with Nissan being within Tennessee, I think 50 years, something like that, we just had a diversity, equity, and inclusion department formed in three years ago. So I agree that they need to be separate, but it's an evolution. We are lucky just to get a department with a vice president, a director, managers, and staff, like a 7-person team within our organization within the last 3 years. So we're thankful for that, but again, it does definitely needs to be separate strategies, separate policies, separate procedures. But right now, we're just thankful just to have it,
But this is a major step, honestly.
A huge step for them to do that. And again, how do you formulate and measure KPIs when you are just now starting a department? You don't have any metrics. There's no one that can teach our vice president what was done in the past, because there's nothing. They're laying the foundation and the groundwork for the future. And they're doing the best they can with what the resources that they do have or don't have. But again, it's one of those evolution type of situations. So just keep us in y'all's thoughts and give us well wishes.
Another question over here.
Hey, so a question I had was, it seems that in recent times, the term DEI has become more of a political weapon in terms of like used by whenever there's something goes wrong with the company or a project fails in the company, the term DEI gets used as a political weapon to say, oh, it shifts the blame to, oh, it must have been a DEI person in the organization is the reason why that failed. Have you faced any ripples of that in your respective organizations? And what are some of the challenges you have to overcome in those kind of personal, interactions to break those kind of negative opinions and attitudes?
I don't know from my perspective, as far as anything negative being associated with someone of a diverse perspective. But what I have found out with talking to different organizations is that when COVID hit and funding and things of that nature, corporations had to take a really good look at the bottom line. A lot of the DEI programs and even departments was eliminated or reduced. And that speaks volumes to the story that corporation has put out there to the employee base, to the media and everyone else that, hey, DEI is important and we're a diverse program, we're a diverse company, blah, 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 blah. But then when the chips fall and they need money, DEI initiatives is the first ones to get cut. So those are the things that corporations have to be mindful of. Again, I think, our previous panelists before us, it was talking about, walking the talk. And if you're not doing that where you're at, you know, like you said, like we have a stand-on business, standing on something. What are you standing on? Because right now you're standing on some sand, because at the end of the day, when the budget is gone and the water comes through, your foundation is gone. So those are things that corporations have to keep in mind.
And the reason it's cut because they cannot measure, you know? It was the same thing. Again, my field is information technology. Guess what? When back in the 80s, when organizations spent so much money on IT, we have all of this research about what is really the business value of IT. And everybody was questioning, are organizations justified to spend that much money on IT? It is the same thing. Instead of IT, put DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is the business value of diversity, equity, and inclusion? What organizations are missing is asking the correct question.
And that shifts the dialogue from a cost to an investment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Right there. Have at it.
It's me back here in the corner. So something that often comes up in the work that I do is tokenism. And so when you recognize that tokenism practices are happening, or you recognize virtue signaling within your company, because as you all just spoke about, like pre-COVID, there wasn't all this talk about DEI in the same way that we're talking about it now. And now that, again, as you said, you know, that chips have fallen, they're standing on sand, and we're seeing a lot of rollout of people eliminating their DEI departments, positions, or just legislation doing blanket eliminations of DEI programs. So in those conversations where you're in these boardrooms or you're having these conversations, can you talk a little bit about what those conversations look like? Because you want to be able to continue to bring your full self to work, but when everything around you is kind of going directly against that, what does that look like?
Can you repeat the question again?
So I guess, what does the conversation look like when you are challenging the leadership against their virtue signaling or their just kind of outright tokenism on picking on specific populations to kind of make themselves look or feel better? What do those conversations look like, and how can we continue to support ourselves in that space and our colleagues as well?
For us, we have that conversation that it's tough to work here. You know, we're putting in long hours within this organization, giving our heart, sweat, tears, and everything else in the organization. And so when we start looking at things that they're ready to cut back on or eliminate, you're eliminating or you're cutting back on an important part of your population who you continue to say that employees are your most important asset and resource. If that is true, then why are you eliminating things that are important to your employee base? And when you have individuals that do not mind having those conversations with the executives, those help. Another thing too is the employee resource groups and all the big organizations have a lot of power that they may not tap into. A lot of the times for their employee resource group, at least for ours, is championed by an executive. So an executive has to be a sponsor of your employee resource group. Mm-hmm. That executive is the mouthpiece for the employees within that organization at the C-suite levels, at the tables, and they're telling them these are the things that are important to our employees. And if you start eliminating these things, then you're going to be eliminating a particular group, or you're going to be offending a particular group. One of the things we don't do a lot of, which I wish we could do, is matrix and taking a tally and understanding how many is this going to affect. You know what I'm saying? Right now, we've just started thinking about surrogacy and having policies and procedures put in place for individuals to go through the surrogate process that I didn't even think about from my perspective until someone brought it into the conversation that they was not had any benefits protected them as far as if they was a heterosexual couple going through the process. And we started looking like, oh, we didn't even think that that was important, but it was brought up from an employee resource group to the executives who brought it into the C-suite. So those are the things that you have to continue to be mindful and remind the people that's in power of what is important. You know, my kids, I have 2 adult children now, and they're always reminding me of things that are important to them, even at this age. And I'm like, well, you know, I've done did my job as raising you. Y'all should be on your own, but no, they reminded me that they didn't ask to be here. So at this particular point in time, you know, you've got to be able to have those conversations or have someone that can have those conversations to advance what's important to you when they start trying to eliminate or remove obstacles.
Mm-hmm. And for us as a nonprofit, we have actually created our strategic plan on a foundation of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so everything that we do based on that plan is what drives us and drives the organization. We go back to, is it in our plan? Is this something that is a focus area of ours? And so we're trying to really incorporate that throughout the organization. If we say we're going to reach these communities in the next 3 years, anything that's outside of reaching Black and Brown communities to reduce the HIV epidemic, if we are not going to have a conversation outside of that, we will not engage in it. If we're going to make sure that 50% of the workforce is going to be diverse and we are going to have candidates coming, we need to be intentional to go to places where we can find those candidates. We will not hire mainstream candidates. We're very clear going back to the strategic plan. And so now we're in the process of doing our next strategic plan. And so we're kind of building on it and we're trying to look at the metrics and the impact that we've had. So that kind of really helps us, me and the board, stay focused on what's the direction and making sure that we are acting on what we have put in a plan.
Glad to see this conversation continue to roll with the room. Let me toss it back that way.
I'd like to ask a question about the cost of bringing your whole self to work. And I want to start with Dr. Moore on this one. Just because you've been quiet for a long time, and I want the academic perspective too. First of all, if you bring your whole self to work, sometimes you're the only person in that category that anybody knows. Like a transgender person is required to be the trans ambassador to the entire company. And that can be exhausting and a little bit discouraging. But also, depending on the demographic you represent, every committee needs representation. And if you're one of the only or the only person in your department, then you're on every single committee. How do you deal with that? What's your self-care strategy? Like, just generically comment on that part of it.
I think a lot of things that you all are talking about, I'm an artist and I teach art, so I have the privilege of being able to make art about these things, be very specific about these things, and I get to write about these things as an artist. So that's one thing right there. And someone asked a question about, like, you know, we have Afrofuturism and what's going on in our communities now. So those are different genres, different movements that I get to like make art about. So I try to teach students that you have value and that, you know, everything we have, it was dreamed up by someone. So you have to imagine like impossible things and futures and presents. So that's sort of how I heal in terms of bringing my whole self to work. I say no. I say, I'm not going to do that. I say, I'm going to go home and go to bed or drink some water or listen to Beyonce or watch Netflix or like, I do like, but it's like, what is Black joy? What is to take care of yourself and the rest? So I feel like some people think that you have to work yourself to death in order to make a change. And I don't do that. Mm-hmm. So I do take time to take care of Maurice, and Maurice is a lot and annoying sometimes, but just to be open and admit that and talk to it. Cause I feel like people think, when you talk about tokenism, like I have my PhD and some people try to make it seem like I did this amazing thing that no one else could do. Like, no, I'm human. I did this thing I wanted to do because I loved art and I wanted to be a super nerd and study drawing for 5 more years after my first 2 masters. But that's how I talk about it. I try to humanize it, like in terms of how I do my career and how I take care of myself. So I don't let people put me in a box or tokenize me, who want to like separate me, and make me just amazing. Like I'm amazing, yes, but we're all amazing. So that's how I talk about it. That's how I bring myself to work. And it's amazing. There are assumptions that we make about ourselves. Like I'll say, can you imagine what an artist looks like? And when I say artist right now, or drawer or painter, there's some people in your head that pop up. Like I'm not who you think of when I say painter or drawer or dancer or scientist or biology. But even I teach at PWI, I have white students who can't even imagine themselves being a painter or a drawer. So it's just like this idealized thing that you think. So I don't know. I like to bring up those questions when I think about taking care of myself, because I try to get students to just like, well, how are you going to be an artist if you can visualize yourself as being an artist? So I think that's how I sort of take care of myself, like just by saying no and like creating space, just not feeling like I have to. I think like in terms of learning about all the queer and Black artists who came before me, and learning about all the people now, that made me feel more comfortable, because I felt like I wasn't the only one doing this fight, so that I know, so that for me, that's how you like take care of yourself, that we're not alone. So
Yeah, one of the other costs is misrepresenting that particular group that you're the quote unquote token for. Just because I'm an out African American gay male don't mean I can speak on behalf of everyone within the organization that are LGBTQ plus type of situation. And just yesterday, our Nissan division pulled our employee resource group together, and we reviewed 2 different ads that's going to be put out there for Pride Month. And prior to that, I've been on marketing ads review panels before. This was the first time that they actually brought all of us into a group type of situation. We all reviewed them separately in previous settings, but it gave us an opportunity to be represented from the LGBTQ plus community across the spectrum. So we had some people from manufacturing, we had some people from quality control, had people from purchasing, had people from accounting, just different perspectives to view these 2 ads and say, which one did we like and why? Why did it invoke whatever feeling it was? And since I'm event planner, my mindset went to more of the creative aspect of the ad, while some other people from like the legal perspective looked at it, well, this is more aligned with where we at currently in our consumer base. This is a safer one if we wanted to go this route. And I'm saying, well, no, this one is more bold. We need to be bold and we need to be outspoken. We need to be doing this, especially if you want to engage in this type of community. So you have people from different perspectives in the same community. We're all LGBTQ plus individuals across the spectrum, but we saw these ads differently. Mm-hmm. So if I was the only one they asked to review that ad, then I would have picked ad A. Well, it did not correlate with some people that were still within the same perspective. So again, you just don't want to misrepresent that organization or that group that you are the quote unquote token for. I should say just representatives, maybe more word than the token.
I've got a question, and any of you can kind of jump in here. A lot of what you're talking about going from to a more inclusion oriented, there's got to be a healthy dialogue along the way, or the conversations have to happen. And at the same time, if you're in an environment where that's already the culture, that's wonderful. If you're in an environment where we're trying to get there, but we're still awkward, that's challenging, even if well-intentioned. That awkwardness can come from, either somebody trying to bring their whole self to work and fit in, or maybe even to the potential allies who would like to reach out to them, but are not yet, they're worried that they'd say the wrong thing or they're not comfortable, right? So what's the advice for that situation for either one of those 2 people in the room that you might offer up? And maybe I'll start it on this end, Bryce.
Again, I don't know if because I'm an artist, we get to be eccentric and colorful and wear jeans and t-shirts and things like that to professional stuff. So I try to be honest. Like I try to say I'm trans, non-binary, I'm Black, obviously. I have learning disabilities. I, just forget things because I get really super excited and happy. So I feel like that makes people more I don't know, it's more inviting for them to talk to. And I try to tell people I make mistakes too. Like, yeah, I studied, like, have a master's in African American studies, so I can talk about race. But when I first started taking classes, it was really difficult because I was afraid. I think the assumption is just because I'm Black or queer, this stuff is easy to talk about. It's not. It's just I have practice, and I know that I'm not gonna beat you up because you say the wrong thing. But I just feel like having conversations and also just being honest. There are certain things I don't get about certain groups and don't understand, but it doesn't mean I can't support you. So I think just being, because I'm very honest about what I don't know and what I don't understand, but I don't put it on the other person to like educate me. But it's like, can we have a conversation with each other that's reciprocal? So I just think letting people know that, you know, those things. And also just telling people like, no, sometimes it's none of your business. Like my business, like we need our own spaces and to like respect that. So I think those things are helpful.
Yeah, I believe it's conversations. It's getting to know each other, you know, until we are able to go from the surface into a more deeper understanding of each other, is when we're going to understand and really things will illuminate to us. And so for me, I mean, every place I've worked, I meet my staff. My first 2 months, I just meet the people that work alongside me. And then from there, continue to have dialogue and understanding and get to know who they are, because we have more things in common than we think we have differences. And until we actually converse and talk about them and understand each other. And I'm the first one to show vulnerability. I carry it on my sleeve. I talk about everything. I mess up. And so my team looks at me as somebody who is real. And you know what? If you fail, what did you learn from it? Let's understand. If you said something that offended somebody, be willing to listen and seek to understand instead of trying to shy away from it and get angry about it. And that, you know, feedback and feed forward is the best gift anybody could give you. And so be willing to listen and be willing to understand and be willing to change if you need to.
From us, it's because this is not our core capabilities, is not our core strength. It's not what's our day-to-day operational type of situation. And so we have to be a little bit more intentional into bringing people into the conversation and making sure that people are included and feel as if their opinion values and means something. So it's very difficult for us to do that and still get the things that needs to get done on a day-to-day basis. And so for us, it's just always a challenge that we are struggling and trying to work through. It's not perfect. It's not going to get changed overnight, but we're making strides along the way, hopefully.
For me, again, communication, but it's a two-ways communication, right? Even if people want to include you, you want to be also willing to be included. So to be heard, it means to open up and also to listen. Another thing is to try to create a shared identity, meaning that we all have our own identities. If there is nothing that overlap with the group, try to come up with a new identity that you can all identify with. So if there is no common ground, make a new one where you can all meet on that new ground.
Yes. Back here, let me get you a mic here.
Yeah, so building off the last couple of questions, I'm kind of just curious, just how do you understand more broadly the similarities and differences between self-definition, group identification, and professional identity? And how do you prioritize that? I mean, not necessarily in a conflict way with the tokenism type questions, but just more broadly in how you strategize that in your outlook toward yourself.
One of the ways that we've done is we have what we call champion diversity training corporate wide. And instead of bringing in someone from the outside of our organization, we actually train individuals within the organization to spearhead and train and lead these training classes. And what that done is allowed individuals to be a representation of Nissan. They also allowed those individuals or trainers like myself to bring their true perspectives of the organization. We can talk about the organization from the past and where we are currently at and where we're trying to go. And that is training involving everyone within the organization. So you have someone that has a vested interest in the organization, teaching and training diversity, equity, and inclusion. But then also there's a exercise in there about unconscious biases and that people didn't realize that they had until you actually put it out there on the wall. And one of the things that we learned, because we are a Japanese-owned company, when we did the same diversity, equity training to our Japanese counterparts, a lot of the stereotypes that we would put on the wall, they didn't have. And so it was eye-opening for us. It's like, for example, when they said, go back there on the wall on this piece of paper and write everything that you can think about, whatever comes to your mind for LGBT plus individuals, just go back there, write it on the wall. And you would have all types of negative comments. There will be some positive, some will be negative, etc. Same thing with women, same thing with African Americans, same thing with elderly. And we would do it for the people from American culture, and you would see a vast amount of negative comments. But then when we did it for our Japanese, it was more positive and very few negative. So again, it goes back to the culture, your upbringing, what you put into your mind, how you think, how you act. And then that's formed like the foundation of the organization. Had we not done that, it would have been difficult to understand how do we go. And then it makes it a difficult conversation because we get funding from Japan. If Japan doesn't feel that diversity, equity is important because it's not part of their culture, they're not going to be invested into that for our organization. We're saying that here in the United States, we operate, we think, marketing, everything is different. So I understand parent Japan, you don't want to give us the allowance. We really need this allowance to survive. We need to buy our lunch. So parent Japan, give us our allowance and we will show you the difference. And that's how we was able to do it.
Mm.
Other questions?
Thank you all so much. I had a question of what advice you would give to younger folks who are going to go onto the job market, or people who are not younger folks going on the job market. Like, what advice do you give folks about bringing your whole self to work and how that you can market that as something that is a positive thing? So we talk a lot about the challenges of that and the costs that it might have, but how do you use that as a strength when you are applying for jobs to say, I'm bringing my full self to work and that's actually an asset?
The first thing I look for is what is the culture of the company. Try to read about them online and see what really speaks to you and highlight that and align it with the things that you are doing. So this is how you can bring your unique perspective that can add to their strategies, to their culture, to all of that. Nobody has a complete whole, and I'm talking about organizations. If we are personalizing or personificating an organization, they don't have a complete soul or whole. Be that missing piece that if they plug you in, you can add and you can be the first step toward that journey of completeness. So try to read about them and see how they align or what different perspective you can add to what they have.
Because your intention is great. Just like being a parent and you're getting ready to feed or bathe your child, what do? You test the formula. You test the bath water. Same thing, your intention is good to feed the baby. Your intention is good to bathe the baby, but you needed to test the water first. You needed to test the formula first to make sure that it's not too hot. And so as you go into an organization, test the water to make sure it's not too hot or you coming in too strong. And then that way you can formulate how your approach is going to be. And don't be afraid to test the water. Don't be afraid to push the envelope just a little bit, but understand your position, your power. And if you don't feel comfortable in the organization to make a change or do something, link up with someone that does have the power to do those things.
I would say come prepared on what you want and what you will accept. and sell yourself and ask for what you need. I think a lot of times young folks that interview, they just go with the flow and they come in and they're like, this doesn't feel right to me. But if you come prepared and express and share your information and what you need, I think it'll be great. You know, I have, my child is looking for a job. And so I actually coached him the other day to go in, and he's like, well, I want a hybrid, maybe working at home. I want to be able to wear my dresses when, you know, feel like it. I want to be able to wear my suits. I was like, that's a lot you're asking for. And so trying to really research, but went into the interview and expressed everything. And the lady was interviewing him, said, wow, I've never had anybody this young be so honest about what they want or don't want, and told her that he'd only stay there for 3 years. And she gave him the job.
Yeah. Nice to have the good story. Reese, any thoughts?
I think I'll say this in an appropriate way. Like, you don't put all your eggs in one basket in a job. It's not a monogamous relationship. I don't know why people think it. I have more than one career. I have more than one job. I don't just rely on teaching to get my work out there. I don't just rely on exhibiting my work in galleries to get my work out there. This conference could lead to an exhibition or a publication. So I say keep your options open and don't just rely on one thing. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're in our last few minutes, but I do want to give the audience, you know, one more chance here. So, additional question, right back here, right there, Will.
Hi. So when you go about trying to find a job as someone who's currently trying to find an internship and wanting to work for a place that is very supportive of the LGBTQ plus community and having diversity and inclusion, but after like the 15th rejection that you've gotten, you're kind of just thinking, maybe I'm being too picky about it. How do you kind of keep on going for it and, you know, keep working for finding a job?
So your question is, if there is no organization that really focusing on diversity and inclusion, is this why you're talking?
I kind of mean like, how do you keep like having that hope that you'll find like a place that you can work for that is supportive of your identity?
I'll say, like a lot of things that we have in terms of different minorities is because we created them ourselves. So like queer communities or queer organizations didn't just always exist. So we had to make our own things, make our own publications. So I'll say, you know, you might have to, which is an amazing thing, get a bunch of people together and create your own thing. And that way you don't have to worry about interning. You could, you know, so I feel like don't forget all the things that we have invented and created. You don't just have to look for somebody else to hire you. You create your own things. So I think that's really important. But I would say keep applying. I applied for the job I have and I didn't get it, but it was another job that I have now. So I don't know. I just say keep applying and don't give up. But we also have to create our own things.
And also find other organizations that tap into other aspects of who you are as an individual, some other things. Because I never would have thought that me being an event planner would spark so much of my interest to the point to where I'm ready to walk away from my 9-to-5 job. I'm saying I need something, but I'm not. But because that sparks what motivates me. I can set up for somebody's wedding and work 24 hours a day, but at 10 hours within Nissan, I'm ready to clock out. I'm ready to close my computer. But if you was to ask me to transition this room to this evening or Saturday's evening's event, I will pull my team and we'll do an all-nighter and everything else. I don't see myself doing that for Nissan or all-nighter. So again, finding something that is passionate, that you're passionate about, and look at that aspect of it. And then once you get into the organization, then you can tap into the other LGBT type of stuff or the women's rights stuff or whatever else that you want to tap into. Because again, it's an intern. You're interviewing them, they're interviewing you, y'all courting, and hopefully that it will lead into a relationship after your internship. Or you may decide you've learned something that you don't want to do in the corporate world with this organization, and you can move that on to a different avenue. But you know, find something that you're passionate about, get yourself into the door, and then you look for the other things that are important to you and to your life.
Maybe you're going to be the one who establish and start that.
Correct.
Right?
Well, we're in our last couple minutes, so I'm going to give you each one real quick question. If you could
not for your questions.
If you could get in a DeLorean and give your 20-year-old self 30 seconds of advice, what would it be?
Say that again?
If you could get in a DeLorean and go back in time to 20-year-old you, what's the 30 seconds of advice you would give you?
For me, don't wait for the opportunity to knock your door. Go, see it, tell everybody that this is the opportunity that you wanted, and go after it, whether with support or without support.
Thank you.
Yeah, turn your fear into fire. Things that my younger 20-year-old self was scared to do and didn't do or shied away from. If I would have turned that into a fire, into a passion, there's no telling where I would be right now. And I think that it would have made my life a lot easier in my 30s and 40s if I would have used that fire in my 20s.
But I'm glad part of where you are now is here.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I would have told my 20-year-old self to go explore the world and try a lot of different things before settling down for what I am doing today. I've been doing the same job for 25 years. I should have gone out and tried some different things.
Yeah.
Go to Ireland.
Yeah.
I'll try not to cuss. As much as it is okay to be a bad euphoric bitch, it's okay to be mediocre. It's okay to just take it easy. You don't have to be the best all the time. So you don't have to be black excellence all the time. So that's what I would tell myself.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to give, first of all, both the audience and the panel a great round of applause because this has been a terrific section all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
And then I have some gratitude. It's nice when people, especially with so many years of experience, are willing to share their stories with us. I'm saying y'all are old. The nice thing about your 50th birthdays, you're still young enough to do it, but you don't care anymore about what people think. So you will actually dance. So everyone who expresses their vulnerability in this way in the conference, we appreciate you very much. But I want to point out Greg in particular. Can I have that picture now?
Oh, really?
Here's Greg at the very first, can we make it big? I want everybody to see. This is the first LGBT plus college conference. And Greg was on this panel on that very first, there it is, it's big now. Thank you very much.
On the side of the stage.
There you are down there at the end, participating in this panel. And there's Patrick moderating
Diane
this panel.
Easter.
And Diane Easter, the one that the
Yep.
awards is named after, who was very instrumental in the conference. But Greg didn't just serve on this panel twice. Greg was the advisory board chair twice.
Yeah.
And I was realizing the other day that I have fond memories of 2016 because I have traumatic amnesia about this conference that year. And you were chair, and it wasn't your fault. We went through that horrific journey together. And the conference is behind on presenting to you one of a very rare, very special conference award that we try to give only one a year. We'll give 2 this year, but I want to give Greg this award for your service to us. And thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we do have horror stories, but that's okay.
So cute.
I don't remember them. Don't remind me.
All right, Dr. McCarthy and panelists, on behalf of the conference planners, supporters, MTSU Lambda Association, the College of Behavioral and Health Sciences, and the Conference Advisory Board, thank you for your support of our efforts in presenting this conference. And we want to especially thank you for your commitment to standing strong. And we ask that you accept this small token of our appreciation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I get too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And we will resume at 4:30.